John Wick is more than an action series, I'll tell you that. In fact, this new theory blew my mind because it's so deep, but it's kinda depressing. Ready for me to change the whole way you see the franchise? Well, sit tight. The series is about to have the 5 stages of grief. Now there's a lot to unpack over here. Don't worry, I'll dive super deep into it. Since it's just the beginning, let me run this theory by you a little gently. Okay, so the idea doesn't seem too far off from the initial plot, right? Wick literally is motivated for revenge after his wife's death. I'm sure the first movie hit everyone hard, especially those who have lost a loved one, because of course, grief is something we all either have or will experience. It's just a fact of life.
A social contract in which you agree to partake. Order and rules. You have broken the rules. The high table has marked you for death. Why would I allow you to leave here alive?
So to say that grief plays a big role in the franchise isn't wrong per se, but to call the whole thing a representation of the 5 stages? Let me elaborate. As of right now, we're waiting on the 4th chapter, which will be released in March, and it's safe to say I'm so pumped. As for what's next, you know that Ballerina is set to come right after. Yup, a spin-off. I'm not exactly sure if it'll be the 5th movie, or if after that they'll release a John Wick 5, but a 6th one sounds iffy right now. To be honest, no one can predict what'll happen in 2 to 3 years, so let's stick to the info we all have right now. This way, it's clear that there are going to be 5 movies, just like the 5 stages of grief.
Anything for the end of the night. Something big, bold.
May I suggest the Benelli M4? Custom bolt carrier release and charging handle.
Not convinced so far? Don't sweat it. This next one is gonna make more sense. Denial is the first John Wick. It starts with Helen's funeral, so the tone is pretty obvious. He's devastated, and that's plain to see. What's also very clear is that he's in the very first stage of denial. There's so much evidence. Throughout the movie, he keeps having flashbacks to when she was still alive. At one point, even the audience is confused because these memories are so frequent. For him, it was like she had never passed away in the first place, but she did, and that was his way of coping with it. In denial, you keep thinking back to how things were before they changed. What they don't tell you is that distracting yourself from the main issue also counts. When you look at his behavior, he's constantly trying to take his mind off the matter. Instead of sitting down and accepting his new reality, he preoccupied himself with other things. Take for example how he tracked and killed the people responsible for stealing his car, and his rage at how his puppy was murdered. Just a disclaimer, I'm not attacking John himself for dealing with his grief this way. In fact, it's pretty natural, and it fits the theory perfectly.
So, then you got married, huh? Settled down. How you managed that anyways?
Luck, I guess.
Yeah.
I bet you're wondering what the next stage is, right? Most people just know the first and the last one. Well, you gotta know them all. And the next one is anger. That's right, baby. In the second one, he's mad. After he was betrayed, he got so angry he was killed on Continental Hotel grounds, which, as we all know, is a sin in the John Wick world. The whole thing is based on the consequences of his actions, because obviously he loses all his resources to the underworld. It's not a full stretch to say this was because of his grief, because he was never the same after Helen died. No one is after something like that. It just changes you. Then the third one is about bargaining.
I think I am. So it's war. You're going to war with the high table.
Skirmish. Unless you decide to shoot me, but then I'd rather die at the hand of a friend than that of an enemy.
Which, interestingly, is also a stage of grief. John was making deals left, right, and center to stay alive. Think about it. He went back and forth between old connections and the high table making negotiations. Not to mention the name of the film itself. Parabellum comes from a Latin phrase that says, "If you want peace, prepare for war." I don't know about you guys, but it sounds like bargaining to me. Now that I've caught you all up, time to talk about the unknown. By that, I mean John Wick 4 and 5. The next stage of grief is depression. So I've got a few thoughts about how it can go down. But keep in mind, if I'm right, it's gonna be a sad movie. Don't believe me? Just wait till you hear what I'm thinking about. John Wick and the Bowery King lose. Now before I get ahead of myself, let me remind you about where we left off. In Parabellum, the last thing we all saw was the two of them sharing their desire to beat the high table. What a way to end a movie, am I right? But if this theory proves true, then the next stage is depression, and anyone can tell you nothing good ever happens in that. That's why I think they could lose the fight, and it'll leave them totally hopeless and dejected. Someone might even die. Not John though. He's confirmed to be in Ballerina too, so there's no way he's being killed off. Not to mention the fact that the entire series is based on him. So it makes sense that the Bowery King might just lose his life in the process, which will be very traumatic for Wick.
Who's her brother?
I see. You had no choice.
Plus, with this hypothetical defeat, he'll find himself unable to escape the clutches of the assassin world, something he really wants. It's not the #1 thing fans want, of course. I also want him to find some form of happiness, don't get me wrong. The guy just can't seem to catch a break. It's tough being an assassin and whatnot, but one little moment of peace can't be too much to ask for. Well, that's where the 5th stage comes in. This one we all know very well, and John needs it desperately. How's he gonna get it though? By defeating the High Table in John Wick 5. Here's one good outcome that might happen. After so much waiting, he could very well face the High Table again and win this time. In that case, the new life he first tried to make the whole series would be over. No more assassin duties, no more killing, no more revenge. He could then find himself accepting that it's over and having a fresh start. Of course, this comes with a lot of self-reflection, which goes hand in hand with accepting Helen's death. While this is an optimistic thing to wish for, you gotta look at the flip side. It's also depressing, but let me tell you just how it ties in with acceptance. Coming out of depression doesn't always mean things are gonna be sunshine and roses. Am I right or am I right? The thing is, if you look at it from a darker lens, he could very well lose to the High Table again and just end up accepting the fact that he's a soldier forever. Horrible, right? Well, the next one is pretty bleak too, even more so in my opinion. He might just realize his only escape is death and dies in the process of trying to defeat them one last time. Either way, all of this is just a theory, y'all. If they make a 6th movie, it'll completely disprove it. But for now, this is all I got.
Don't you do it. You're excommunicado, John. And that marker doesn't mean shit.
But what do you think of the 5 stages of grief theory about the John Wick franchise? Do you think John Wick 4 will be about depression? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.